Hey folks, Steve here, and like Doctor Strange says in Infinity War, we're in the end game now. Uh, Another Dark Sands video here. This is going to be the last actual play video in the series. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit through the final turns 16 and 17, and then we'll break into sort of a debrief where I'll talk about sort of the strategy, the tactics, what have you, involved in the game as I played it, the various mistakes I made as each side, and the factors of some of the game rule mistakes, I guess, that I've made. So we'll look at that here as we get going through the last two turns. I think these turns are going to be relatively quick. I'm going to try to do as much off-camera as I can, with just knowing that at this point, I thought the Allies would be getting a little bit farther. So ever since we started the Assault Doctrine, which turned out to not be as easily usable as I thought due to the divisional restrictions, but even in practice, it hasn't gotten us the right gains. Of course, I haven't been rolling stellar either. So we've got only two turns left. The Allies need to go for broke, basically, because they're going to lose anyway. If they don't make any change now, they're going to lose. The tough thing is, if they make attacks that fail, they lose steps that they're not going to be able to use for further attacks, right? So it's just sort of, they've got to push through the Axis wall, and I don't think they're going to have the time to do it in order to take both Solemn and Bardia. They need to take both in order to win the game, and I just don't see where they're going to be able to do it. It's like a case of so close yet so far. Anyhow, I did the replacements already, and they're on the board. Basically, the Axis were able to repair some of their tanks and even get a destroyed tank rebuilt. I actually probably might have wanted some infantry replacements, just because some of the units on the line are a little beat up. The Allies got plenty of replacements, or their usual 2 and 2, which seems to be a common occurrence for their replacements, and they were able to touch up some units, but both sides are, at this point, I think, tending to lose more than they can replace, and even the Allies are kind of hurting. All the reinforcements are done, so all it is now is just straight up operational head bashing for the win. To see what happens here. The activation chit mix for the last two turns, whoops, sorry, try to get this on here, get that square, are actually going to be the exact same for each side for these last two turns. So I may not do a cut here where I show this again, because it's just going to be the same for turns 16 and 17. So logistics as always, the Allies get Monty, the powerful 8th Army activation chit, 2 move onlys and 2 combat onlys. But they're full moves and they're full combat. So if you figure that this is like a move in combat, these moves in combats, and this could be a move or combat, the Allies actually get a lot of actions, like a lot of activities. They have a lot of potential. They still could, if they can punch through the line, race along the desert road towards Bardia and the Halfaya Pass. They've got to get past the Halfaya Pass, and then into Solemn, and then on to Bardia. So it's going to be tough. If they can at least get past the Axis line this turn, they may still have a chance, but they're going to have to take some big risks in turn 17 to take Bardia. If they only take Solemn, the Axis still win, because they're going to get a victory point for Tobruk, and they're going to get a victory point for Bardia, I believe. So, that's just the way the cookie's going to crumble there. I don't think there's anything else they can do but try to force the issue. I'm trying to look to see if there's anything else. Yeah, I guess that is it. Huh, okay. Alright. Yeah, because neither side got any of the turn-based victory points. The Axis never controlled Mursa Matra and Tobruk at the same time. In fact, they never got close to Mursa Matra. But likewise, the Allies never got even close to Benghazi because I played either poorly as the Allies or well as the Italians in the early game, where the Allies were never able to really get even onto the West map properly. For the Axis, though, they have options, but they're limited. So we get the Rommel. That's one nice shot to use for a situation-based scenario. I think what's going to happen is we'll use this if we do have a broken line. We might use that to try to shuffle some German units back to Somme and Bardia to better protect those areas. We get our Panzer Army Africa. Again, only useful on the center map at this point, but we're on the center map and that's not going to change, so that should give us some decent activations along the way here. We get a full move chit, but it's only a move chit, so if we need to reset the line, we can. Then we've got a half move or crappy combat and a half move or crappy combat, and depending on how things go, we'll have to decide how we want to use it. The Allies will have initiative this turn due to the chits that were played out at the end of last turn. Next turn, the default would be Axis, so it's going to be kind of tough to see if the Allies can really make use of what they got here. And for once, I don't think the Allies are going to use a move action for their first activation, because they basically already have units where they can be. There's a few areas where it might be optimal to put them in. So maybe I don't know. If they use a move and then they follow it up with a Monty attack, and the Rommel chip probably won't preempt it because the Rommel chip, the Axis wants to hold in reserve. They can do, adjust the line and attack, and maybe they will do that. But things are getting kind of hairy here. Just to show again the actual board position of where everything's at, we're basically all along this line here with the Axis lined up, trying to anchor themselves on the coast, all the way down here into the desert. I'm starting to bounce my counters around too much. And we're just sort of out here, at the brink. And the Allies have a bunch of beat-up units down here that really aren't going to be able to do a whole lot. They could move up, and we could try to take out that tank unit. And if we're successful, that could mean then that the Allies can start turning a flank a little bit. Their problem is going to be their own supply issue. They really need to kind of close this up before they can get all the way up here, because they're not going to be able to count enough hexes for supply purposes. They might be able to knock some other units out of supply, but they will be out of supply themselves, so that might be worth the risk to do it, at this point anyway. So I think we are going to do a move, and then we'll follow up with the Monty. So I'm just going to put those two activation chits on the board. I'm going to stop recording to make those adjustments, and I'm also going to do the combat. I'll bring us back after the combats are done. We'll hit the highlights. Hopefully we'll see some Axis units busted up and moved out of the way, so we'll see. Okay, well, one could imagine that the attacks didn't go as well as we could have hoped. So at best, we were able to do some both sides lose a step, and unfortunately, way down here in the south, we actually had a 1/2 EX result, which is kind of a bummer. All attacking defending units were reduced by 1 step, and we had more attacking units than defending units, so it was like, okay, the one defending unit flips, but then every other unit that was attacking also is now flipped, and it just is weakening the Allied offensive capability. We had an attack to go up here. The anti-tank guns really helped. I tried to concentrate Allied tanks together to get as high of a combat factor as I could, but the Allies still had a fair number of assets. Now, the one good thing that has resulted for the Allies here is that the Axis is basically out of assets besides the anti-tank guns that stay on the map. The Allies, unfortunately, only have the +1 30th Artillery that could be used down here, and then they've got 1 RAF Air Force asset, and that's it. So very quickly we've used up both sides' assets, and because for the Axis it just makes sense if if we stop attacks now, even if it uses up all the assets, what it does is it creates if we can deal damage to the attacker, it lessens their ability to attack later. So I think just working out the strategy, I think it's not a terrible thing to blow all of your defensive assets here. And critically, the Axis have their anti-tank down here, sort of protecting this southern flank to the open desert. And then now up here, where there was a chance that the Allies could have busted through here, but they just can't make it right now. But now this stack is being protected with an anti-tank gun there, helping to defend that part of the map. Now, we could still maybe see this get cut through. Problem is, getting the Allies up through that way is difficult with the Zocs underway. So, there's a salient there, but it's going to be very difficult for the Allies to get through it. And I suspect the Axis may even be able to counterattack into here, knock them out, or, maybe even, we'll see. But again, the Axis doesn't need to do anything too crazy. They just need to sit here, hope the attacker rolls poorly, and make very discreet attacks in certain parts of the line to throw the Allies off balance, and they're going to win. So we'll go to the chit draw. So I'm going to get the chits all in there. We still have the Rommel chit, and I think for now they're okay without using it. And we will draw the next chit, and it is an Axis move, and it is a full move. Now there's not a whole lot for us to do here that really sticks out. Let me see, I've got a German unit way in the rear that you guys can't quite see. There's still some activity back here. I've got some Italian units kind of scattered about because they were expecting the Allies to maybe bust through, and having that sort of defense in depth to hold the critical desert road junctures. And right now, I probably don't need to bring them to the front. They can still remain a defensive sort of bulwark, though I think it may make sense to move some of these units back here. We can kind of leave Tobruk by itself, because at this point the Allies aren't going to go for Tobruk. They're going to go for Bardia and Sollum. Those are really the better options. So I may move some of those guys up. So I'll take us off recording. I'm going to take care of some of these movements, and then we'll be back. Okay, moves are pretty simple. Moved the rebuilt tank unit up to defend that lone Italian, because we don't want to lose that part of the line. Again, made some minor adjustments. The Allies could still cut through here a little bit, so we got to be a little careful how we want to deal with this. But that was all we needed to do, really, for the Axis move. So now we'll draw the next chit. Could be any side's chit, and it is Allied combat. So here again is the Allies' attempt to smack the line of the Axis and try to make some holes in the wall to advance. So I'll take us off camera. We may entertain some attacks down here, but it might be tough. We may still try to attack up here. It's going to be a tough call, but we'll look into it. So when I come back, we'll show the results. Okay, so the Allies have actually made some progress here. So down in the south, they were able to make some attacks that basically just drained the reduced German units, and now we do have a front that's starting to be opened up now that we could try to start racing around these units and start causing some encirclements. So the Allies have a chance to get through here, though it's anybody's guess as to whether or not they'll be able to really make the right headway here. Some attacks in the center, which were taken at 1-to-1 odds on the mobile chart. I rolled, I think, like 3 6s in a row for combats for the Allies, and they pushed back a bunch of German units, which is opening things up a little bit. And then in the north, we're plinking away at that stack there Not necessarily making the headway we want, but if we keep pushing down here on the south flank, that might actually be our way to go. And there's still plenty of activations to happen yet in the turn. Now, the Axis player could try to use Rommel and resituate some units, but I think they want to wait for a more emergent situation. Okay, we pull Panzer Army Africa, so this is actually probably the perfect pull for the Axis. So what they're going to probably do is, because that HQ, where is it? Here, 1, 2, 3. Ew, it doesn't activate nearly as many units as I would like. We still have an opportunity here to try to fix the line a little bit. So we're going to look to do that. I'm going to take us off recording. We'll come back. The line will look a little bit different. The Germans are going to try to set up a little bit differently. And then we'll see what happens. So the Allies are making their push. They might be able to dislodge the Axis here. We'll see what happens. Okay, so with the Panzer Army Africa, Chet, we moved some units down to try to fix this position up, and we made some minor attacks that did, unfortunately, I was rolling on the 6-to-1 chart, and I was rolling with a +2, and I rolled a 1, which gives an EX result, which is really not good. Like I don't think the Axis wants exchange results at all at this point. So we were able to eliminate a bunch of units here, but now we have 2 reduced tanks, which is kind of a problem, but they're powerful enough facing reduced infantry down here that what I think we might try to do is try to attack this unit and then advance and still hold this flank against weakened infantry that just, I mean, they might try to attack, but it would just be so poor that they would just take attacker losses, pretty much. That'd be the only result that could really happen for them. So we're going to use the Rommel chit to do it, because otherwise the Allies could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that could cause some they could get up around here and start causing some problems, and we just want to stop that right away. So we're going to play the Rommel chit. We're going to activate this stack here. I'd activate the 21st Division, but I think the next closest 21st Division unit is like super far away, and it's not going to do us any good. Maybe there aren't any more 21st Division. Yeah, I guess not. All right. So we're going to be attacking down here. It's 16-2. It's 8-to-1 odds +2. I mean, it's as good as it can get, as long as we don't roll a 1, I guess. Let's see, if we rolled a 2, gosh, we need to roll pretty well and just eliminate this unit. Trying to think, if I did it, would 4-to-1 be better? Not really? Okay, well, we'll see. If we lose a tank unit here, I'm going to be really irritated, but we need to secure the flank as best we can. So this is a little bit of a gamble, honestly. And there's not much else that can really be done here, because everything else is kind of out of range. Yeah, okay. So we rolled, let's see, +2. Okay, so we roll a defender eliminated. Or no, that's an exchange result. Oh my gosh, alright. Oh man, that's stupid. That's rough. That is rough. That is rough, my friends. That's all I can say. That is rough. That actually puts us in a much worse position as the Axis. I shouldn't have done that. And we got rid of the unit, but the problem that existed before still exists now, where we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I think the unit will be okay using Allied. It's going to start getting hairy here for the Axis. They're going to have to pull back probably. Alright, we're going to the pool, the cup, I mean, and we get Allied combat. This is going to be their last regular combat, though they'll still get the core activation. The trouble is, these units down here are still very weak. If we attacked here to here, it'd be 1 to 4 odds, and gosh, can I even attack if it's less than 3? 1 to 3. I have to look. Yeah, okay. So this would be attacker eliminated if they attacked. Let's see, 2 to 4. 2 to 4 is 1 to 2. So this Australian division is going to do a assault attack here. So it's going to be 2 to 4. We're not going to throw any additional support in. 2 to 4 is 1 to 2. Ouch. Okay, we rolled a 1, unfortunately. And that's actually attacker eliminated, so that was bad. We were hoping to do some attritional losses, but that's okay. And now I think for both sides, I'm just making really dumb attacks here. That was foolish of me, I guess. Though we do have other units nearby. Attacking this hex might work. It would be 11. Technically, you're supposed to announce all these combats. I'm just kind of rolling with it at this point. 4, 15, 15 to 5. 3 to 1 odds. This is going to be a regular mobile attack. And, well, that was a cocked die. We'll roll it again. We rolled a 6. All right. 3 to 1, 6 is an exchange. Ouch. Well, okay. So these units are eliminated. We have to lose 2 steps. One of which has to come from this tank. And maybe we'll lose it from this guy here. Oops. Put him in the wrong place. And we could advance, though there is some danger in that. I think we do it. These guys can't really get anywhere anyway, and we'll be able to plug the gap on our next move action. And I think, again, we try to attack up here as best we can. I don't think any of these other attacks necessarily make sense. We could try 7, 10, yeah. That would be kind of dicey. Yeah, I think we try up here, and it would be 11, 18, 24 to 10, 12, 14. Oh, that's actually not great odds. 24, 14, yeah, that's not even 2 to 1 odds. Dang. Be 101 on the mobile. We could force a retreat. That would actually be alright. So it's 101 odds. I don't... man. I don't like that. But there's nothing else I can do to make it better. So we rolled a 3. Both sides take a step loss. And we're down another tank step. I think the Allies are just burning themselves out here. Though this Italian stack is getting reduced. Okay, we'll go to the cup. Axis, move, or crappy combat. Well, I think this could be their next move. They don't. Yeah, if they this is their opportunity for a movement. They do have some challenges with some Zocs. So I'm going to have to look. It's only a half move, so we're going to have to just be really careful with how we proceed from here. But I will take us off recording. We'll come back when the move is complete. Okay, not a huge amount of crazy movements, just trying to keep various units safe. Though, you know, it's like up here where it's bunched up against the coast, there's nowhere to really go, and some of the Zocs are keeping us from being able to move a whole lot. The Allies are kind of breaking up the Axis down south, but there's not very many places to go. Did start moving up some of these other units over further west. Dropped a garrison here, moved forward, moving units forward. And hopefully, you know, we'll be able to get some new fortified boxes, because I think the ones that have been removed off the board, I can't place again until the next turn. But what we're going to want to do is put a fortified box here for the Halfaya Pass, maybe some areas around here, because this is going to start to fall apart, but there's only so many activities left. In fact, the Allies really only have one more attack phase this turn. So we'll see what happens here. We will pull. It is the Allied move marker. I think there's some obvious movements we want to make. So, like here. Maybe even. Actually, what we might do is move here, move here. Let's see if I can get 1, 2, 3, 4. Problem is, we'll be out of supply ourselves. That might be worth it to try. Unfortunately, the logistic chits are about to go up, and that's the real problem. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That won't be enough, or will it? Yeah, that actually might be enough. It's gonna be dicey. We're gonna cut ourselves out of supply, but we're also gonna cut a lot of other units, I think, out of supply, because this, I made an error as the Axis. I didn't cover this. This is gonna be a big problem. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These guys are going to be out of supply, because we're blocking the tracing to the trail with this Zoc and this Zoc. Unless this unit can go, well, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So he's fine. But the rest of these guys, I don't think we'll be able to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He'll be out of supply. Yeah, this is okay. That was a decent move. I don't think. Gosh, if we go. Yeah, that's about as good as it can get. Unless we also then do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There will be out of supply, but it almost doesn't matter. Like it almost doesn't matter because they'll all be removed and out of supply at the same time, I would think, right? Right? Like that's, if you can't trace the zone of control, or you can't trace line of supply, it's like they're putting themselves out of supply, but what are we going to, the Allies are going to, what, lose a couple units? I mean, that's probably worth it, right? We're kind of stuck everywhere else. This could be a big deal. Oh, and I guess I got to do some moves. 1, 2, 3. Well, I guess I could have just, yeah, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay. Next chit, and it's going to be one of these logistics chits, I think. Yeah, logistics. Okay. So, here's the conundrum. Can these guys count supply? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They can't quite make it. This guy can make it, because he can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wait. Oh, maybe he can't. 1. Yeah, because this unit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Can't get there. So we're going to have a lot of out of supply units here. And I assume that this is possible, right? That like units can put each other out of supply. So he's out of supply. All of those guys are out of supply. These guys are also out of supply. And everyone else is fine. But this is going to be a major blow to the Axis. Alright. Next chit is logistics. So everything remains the same. That means all these units are going to go poof at the end of the turn. Very likely, anyway. Okay. Hold on, got it. Only 2 chits left, so it's kind of hard to shake it up properly. Okay, we got the 8th Army for the Allies. So, what do they want to do here? Now, unfortunately, we've got some issues that have plagued the game situation for a while. So the 30th is just dealing with all of these out of supply units. There's no point in moving anything. I guess maybe I can move one unit like this would be the right move. And knowing these guys are going to go poof, I mean, well, they'll get an attack, and they'll attack out of supply, because the Axis attack hasn't happened yet. But I think if they do that, will this help them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, it's not going to help. But at least gets the situation a little bit better. Up here, gosh, it's just getting tough. We can't get quite where we want to be to make these good attacks happen. Especially because again, this is an issue that I had run into previously. That 13th Corps is non-tank based, so it's going to be like we could get a couple of tank units. God, it's such a tough thing. We could be attacking with 6, 9, 12, 16, 2. Maybe just be 1-to-1 odds. 7, 10, 16, 7. Okay, so we've got a 2-to-1 attack here. And that's all it is. So 2-to-1, regular mobile CRT, roll to 4, defender retreats. So these guys have to retreat. 1, 2, 3, 4, I guess. We lose the fortified box. And this unit advances. So we're actually making some progress as the Allies, but it's probably not going to be enough. And now the last shit is the Axis move or combat. They can't move because they've done all their move actions. They can do a combat. Now, unfortunately, we can't hit these guys. We don't have a unit close enough to hit these guys. So the whole issue of supply is going to exist here for all of these units. They can't get out around them. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Not enough. Man, that's crazy. Ooh, maybe the Allies have a chance after all. I just realized oh, I moved the camera and you guys didn't see it. Anyway, I'm sorry. Can't fix it now. There was a combat here. This unit moved up, and this unit had to retreat out. And I sort of could retreat him following the retreat compass to kind of help shield that desert road, but there will start to be problems for the Axis here. Now that's the end of the chit play. We get to the attrition segment. These units still cannot trace supply, so as supply markers, we'll just remove. These units are gone. This Panzer army is gone. Panzer unit is gone. Everything here is gone. And all of a sudden, the Axis is hurting. Tremendously so, in fact. Because now, I mean, they lost some units, but now the Allies have a wonderful path here to start turning up. There's no units. There's no units here. So there is going to have to be an immediate, full-scale retreat that is going to need to happen on this turn. And fortunately for the Axis, the next turn is their initiative. So they'll probably pick move, and then they're going to do a hasty attempted pullback to try to get a new defensive line, and then it's going to come down to the Allies doing their attack. Victory check, nothing there. Building, no. Disruption removal. Get one disrupted removal out. Asset availability we'll fix up here in a second, and we'll go into the next turn. We'll show the replacement chits here in just a second, so we'll be right back. Okay, here we are, the final turn of the game, the final replacement chits that were drawn. The Axis only had one left, and it was for 2 tank replacements, plus the freebie they get for it being an odd turn. And they use that to rebuild a tank unit and up to full strength, and then rebuild another tank unit, which came in on the HQs. That may help a little bit the challenge that the Axis has in trying to get all of their guys in some sort of defensive positioning. Though the reality is they're probably going to have to abandon that one stack of Italian units up against the coast because they just can't get them out of the Zocs. But a sacrifice that will need to be made to preserve the rest of the Axis army. So it is Axis initiative. They're going to have the first to go. They're very likely going to have to use their move chit to create a new defensive line that will hopefully last them the entire rest of the turn. Now, just to show again, I said I wasn't going to show it, but dang it, I'll go ahead and do it. The chits for this last turn, we have our logistics chits, we have Monty, we have the 8th Army, 2 full moves, 2 full combats for the Allies. The Axis only have Rommel, the Panzer Army Africa, a full move, which we're going to probably use right away. And then, the crappy ore chits, which at this point, I don't think it'll make sense for the Axis to attack at all, but they'll have to at least draw 1 combat chit. Since we'll likely be using these for moves unless, this one we have to use for a move. This one, it could be 2 combats if the combats make a lot of sense. But I don't see where it's going to help us. Any attacks now will probably only weaken our defense, and we only need to last now through the last couple of turns, or last couple of actions, rather. So, just to show the current overall position that we're at on the map, it's probably worth moving this whole camera over for the rest of this video, show what the situation is. So the victory cities in mind are Bardia and Solemn here. The Allies need to push through here and up. And their main problem is going to be, there's some open desert here that they could potentially be cutting units out of supply. But things also get constrained here for a couple of reasons, right? We have the escarpment and ridges. Can't cross the escarpment. You can cross ridges, but combat over it's going to be tough. So there is good defensive terrain that the Axis can try to fall back to here, where, in the early game, when it was just the Italians didn't have enough force to really defend all these positions properly. The Axis still kind of does have enough force that they could put up some decent defensive line. We can't defend super great through this desert area, but we don't have to. What we just need to do is protect back here and hope that the Allies can't swing up around. And we've got enough of those reserve units that we can kind of make that difficult for them. At most, the Allies are going to have 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 combat actions and 2 moves or 3 moves. So it's the real question for the Allies is, do they have enough action economy to get to where they need to be? And boy, I don't know if I was really doubtful that the Allies were going to do anything, but here they've sort of broken this whole situation open a little bit by dominating that southern flank with bloody combat. So I'm pleasantly surprised by the turn of events so far. It's still going to be interesting, nail-biting down to the wire to see if the Axis can hold on. I'll get to why in a real-world situation it would be wouldn't be worth anything. This current game map situation, because history goes on after the game is over, right? But I'll talk about that in the debrief as we review how the game would impact the overall strategic situation of the war. Anyway, we're going to do the Axis move as their initiative chit. The rest of the chits will go into the cup, and I will show the map again once I have finished that Axis move. The Axis move, just as a sneak preview, is going to be a full retreat back to more defensible positions, again making use of the ridges and the way out this way. And note that this hex is very important here, this Halfaya Pass, because the way that the hexes are structured, if you're going to attack this hex, you can only attack it from this hex on this side or here. So unless you've completely encircled Solemn, you can only attack from these 2 hexes, which means it's going to be very difficult for the Allies to project a lot of force into there, and they're going to have to get through all these other guys in the process. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. So all right, we're going to go off camera. I'll come back. The map will hopefully look quite different. Okay, so this is the new situation for the Axis. I pulled back what I could to now defend again through this ridge line, and then out here in the desert a little bit. This will force, if the Allies can try to punch through here, they're going to take losses before they can get down to this single hex down this way. The pass in and around that ridge, cove, I don't know what you want to call it, is defended here well with some units, and again, try to space out the Zocs so that we can slow down the Axis, or rather the Allies, from coming out around. In the case where they fall, or they're somehow circumvented. We have units on critical trail junctions and a unit here helping to defend the pass. We're also able to put down some fortified boxes, and we'll continue to do that as we can get movements just to make sure that we can put guys in place. The thing about the fortified boxes are you can only place them if the units don't move, so when we had to pull the units back, we couldn't do any fortified boxes there, but in the rear we could, and we did where it was possible, and again we'll keep trying to do that to just make those attacks harder and harder. Now, if the various allied combats that need to happen come up too early, like say right now, we are not going to be able to make use of them, and our action economy is just so limited that right now we have to use Monty as a movement chit. I think we just have to, and there's nothing that if we played Rommel to intercept, I mean, there's not much that we're going to be able to do. I guess maybe what we would do, I got to move the camera a little bit so I can step forward. What I might try to do is activate a certain division and try to have them put down fortified boxes. But I don't think it'd be worth it right now to do that yet, because we don't know what's going to happen with attacks and retreats. So the Allies will use Monty, as they are wont to do, and what they're going to use it for is as a move chit, and they're going to move these guys up. Now, the one challenge is going to be that because we still have these units here, after we made our move, we're going to have to keep some units there to keep it surrounded, so to speak, so that when the logistics comes up, they can be properly eliminated. So that's one challenge. It's sort of a good thing the Axis could leave those guys behind anyway, because it's going to cause the Allies to have to leave some dudes behind. So we'll look to see what the Allies can do with their move. We'll be right back. Well, with movement factors being what they are and somewhat limited ability to kind of get everybody up, this is what we were able to get to here. So we're close in a lot of areas. Couldn't pull all the way up. We are up against some of the ridge line attacks that should be happening. We had to leave a couple guys behind dealing with that encircled Italians, but as soon as the logistics chip comes up, they'll be out of supply, and we ought to be able to just very quickly attack it, get them out of there, and then move on. We can maybe even try attacking just whenever an attack opportunity comes up, but out of supply would probably be better, but we do need to get units applying that pressure up along the way, so we'll see what happens. We're going to go to the cup. And actually, do the Axis dare try to do what the Allies did? Can we get this tank out there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Nah, they'd be able to count up to here and then be fine. So yeah, we won't use the Rommel chit. Alright. Pulling the next chit. It is the Axis half move, or combat marker. Combat may be debatable, but I think we want to put down fortified hexes where possible. So we're doing it for the Halfaya Pass. It's probably most critical to watch this spot because that's really the pivot point. So we'll put one there. And that's our move. I don't think there's any other moves that we could make that would be any more useful at the moment. So we'll go to the cup. And we got logistics. Okay, so only thing that really takes effect here is that those Italians that are surrounded are going to get their out of supply marker. So we'll probably see those guys go poof here any gosh darn second. Next chit is the Allied move. Not the most opportune time for this, but we'll make use of it as we can. So I think some of these should be pretty simple to deal with. So we're going to move up here. Yeah, maybe do like so. And then we'll have these guys come up this way, here, and here, and then here. Whoops. Real simple. I mean, we're getting all of our forces brought to bear as we can. And what may end up happening now is we've got some decent stacking. If we can eliminate this, we'll have them maybe swing down south. But we're running out of actions here, because even if we get through this line, we've got to take Solemn and Bardia, and I don't think the Allies have the ability to do it. I just don't see it happening. But we'll play through to the end. Next chit, Axis Mover Combat. Well, they've used all their moves, so the only option here is combat. So we'll have to look and see, are there any combats that really make sense? Probably not. I mean, we could try something here. No. Gosh, no. Yeah, I don't think the Axis attacks at all. Maybe the only thing they might try is some sort of breakout action against one of these stacks of units, just to slow them down. They'd attack with 4, be 1-1 odds, -2. 1-1 odds -2. What's that look like? We could do. I don't want to make it too easy for them. No, we won't attack. So the Axis ditches that counter. They're not going to take any action with it. Yeah, I think the Allies are going to fail here. They're not going to be able to take anything. We get Allied combat, so I think we just kind of. I think I'll just record our way through this one very quickly. So I think these guys here are going to attack here. And let me see. I guess I would have moved this HQ up again. So these guys attacking here, 6 to 7. And we'll throw in some support here. So let's see if I can find. Forgot to flip some of these Allied markers back. We'll do +4 there as an attack, so that would make it 10 to 7. 10 to 7. And maybe we'd also throw in, I mean, shit, might as well just throw in all the artillery in the world. I think I can do more than one artillery. Oh, was this an upgrade? It doesn't say upgrade. Me? Oh my gosh, if this was supposed to be an upgrade, I screwed that up. It isn't clear on the map that it's supposed to be an upgrade. Withdraw for upgrade. Okay. Alright, maybe I shouldn't have been using that. But it's not clear. The artillery is not listed as an upgrade on the charts at the top. So I thought the 13th Corps just had 2 artillery markers, but apparently they don't. I guess it's supposed to be withdrawn. I'm not sure if that's in the errata or not. But you would think. Yeah, it's not listed here. Yeah, that's funny. I don't know. I don't know what to think about that. Alternatively, we throw in some Allied air, I guess. Right? and we get 12 to 7. Not quite 2 to 1 odds, but the Axis would have to throw in a lot of resources to try to defend it. And even if they put 2 in, that would be 9. We'd still have 6, 10, 11, 12, 12 to 9. So it'll be 1 to 1 odds assault table. We rolled a 3. Both sides take a step loss. So step loss, step loss. Any other attacks here? Well, we could try a 1 to 2, but I don't think that. I'm not sure that would be very useful at this point. Attacking here would probably work, so we would want to go with 11, 15, 18 to 3 is 6 to 1 odds. Maybe we throw in Allied air or Axis air to defend it. I'm not sure how much of a difference it'll make. 11, 15, 18. 18 to 5 is 3 to 1 odds. This is just a regular 3 to 1 odds of 5. That's a defender retreats and takes a step loss. So now we're talking a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4. And these guys advance after combat. And so we're getting closer. We're causing problems, at least. Then here we would do, 6 to 4. The ridge gives them protection as well. -1, ooh, so it'd only be 4 to 4. They'll take that. Well, actually, I might not take that. We don't have enough resources to really help. Well, we have a 30th, so we do 7. 7 to 4. 7 to 4. And is that it? Yeah, if this is... It's funny. Funny how that works. It doesn't say to withdraw those tank markers, but they are listed as withdrawn and upgraded on the counters themselves. So I may have been cheating as allies by having them have extra artillery firing. And really, probably the same thing with the Axis. So I guess it's been somewhat fair there with the Italian artillery. Oh my. Okay, well, anyway. What a crapshoot. Okay, so anyway, back to 7 of 4. Can I get any other assets in there? No. 7 of 4. 7 of 4, and that's it. 7 of 4. So 1 to 1 odds, and it's going to be on the mobile chart because we can't quite get, at least I don't believe we can get the assault chart there with the units that we're attacking with. Roll the 3, both sides lose a step, which is kind of what we wanted. So that is gone. These are, if I can, I'm stuck on the plexi. This guy's gone. And I think we can advance after combat, even with the ridge. And now that's going to be a little bit of a problem for the Axis to deal with now. And I somehow lost track of a unit. Not sure where he was supposed to be. Oh, yeah, there he is. Okay. Ridiculous. All right. So that's some goodness. Then, is it worth attacking 8 to... Yeah, probably not. 7 to 8, probably not. 11 to 6. Probably worth it, right? So we'd throw in naval assets. So that's 13 to 6. 13 to 6. The Axis would throw in... Well, what they'd probably do, I guess, is they'd throw in this anti-tank, right? So 10, so 13 to 10. It's 1-1 odds on the mobile chart. We rolled a 1, so Allies a trip. Or, take 1 loss. Yikes. Okay, and then the final battle that we'll have here is we will try to wipe this out. So that's 7, 10, with a +2 against 6. So it's really 1-1 odds. Maybe we should have used that Navy for that battle, but 1-1 odds, and the enemy's got nowhere to go. 1-1 odds with +2. Well, we rolled a 6, so +2 is 8. DR, star, these guys go poof. And that's the end of that for those guys. And I've cleared the way, but is that going to be enough? All right, back to the cup. And we pull Allied Combat. Allied Combat. So, I think we try down here again. We got to go for broke now. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. So, it's going to be a measly 4 to 4. Axis will throw in support, so it's 4 to 5, and thus it's 1 to 2 odds on the assault table. We rolled a 2. Now, Allies take a step loss. Could have gone better. There's probably some worth in either attacking here or here. This is maybe a more critical juncture point, but the Axis has 7, and we'd attack with 4, 15, Hmm, 2, 10, 13. Boy, that's tough. 17 to 8. 17 to 8. That's 2 to 1 odds. 17 to 8. But the Axis could throw in this guy. Make it 12. So that's 1 to 1 on the mobile results table. We get a 5. It is a retreat for the Axis, so this is actually going to be a big deal. So, do 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Fortified box is gone. And this unit advances after combat. So now it's kind of important. The Allies could cut these units out of supply. That could happen here. In fact, it's very likely to happen right now. But it won't be enough to win the game, I don't think. Logistics. So, no, it won't matter. So all the units that are in supply are going to stay in supplied for the remainder of the game. So there goes the Allies cutting guys out of supply. Only a couple chits left. Has to be an Axis chit next. There's only one more Axis chit besides Rommel. That's the Panzer Army Africa. Let's see, what do we want to do? I think it would behoove them to pull back probably, so... And the rest of those units would have been out of range, so we most we could do is pull back. And last two chits, besides Rommel, we could have Rommel do something still, though I don't think there's much for them to do. Actually, we will do the Rommel chit, and that is to do this move here, which is to pull these guys back to this hex. So they can't be cut out of supply or surrounded or anything like that. And then next pull is the 8th Army. I did swap. I managed to move the HQs around so that I could actually make use of them properly, which unfortunately took me too long. But for the 13th Corps, you can move all these units, so, well, these units down here, I guess. So there's certainly, now, do something, what? You're not done. Like so, like so, like so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 5. I mean, I think that's as far as they can get. Guess I would have done that. So let's see, 2 to 3. 2 to 3 is 1 to 2 odds. Gonna do it with the attrition assault table. Rolled a 5. Both sides lose a step, so they're getting there, but it's not going to be valid enough. 4, 7, 7 to 5. In the regular chart, they roll a 5. They got a retreat. 1, 2, 3, 4, and they'll advance after combat. These guys, 4, 7 to 2, 3 to 1 odds on the regular table. 3 defender retreats. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's it. So the final chit of the game is the Allied move, and there's nowhere for them to go. I think I'll call it here. Okay, what could we do? Well, you send 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You knock out this HQ, make it move. You go, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you'll be cutting that guy out of supply. Moving these guys up. Moving these guys up. And you'd probably come up here like this. Come up here like this. Disrupt that HQ. Send them back here. And that's it for the game. And so, if we looked at that, that's the last move. Attrition segment. There's nothing. There's no attrition because technically those guys are fine. They weren't marked out of supply. So they'd be fine, even though they're surrounded. I mean, this is what the Allies would have done with that move. And I guess, they would have moved some more guys out this way, I guess. Whatever. They would probably look something like that or close to that. Problem is, these units coming up here, they're going to hit another Axis wall, though these guys would be able to reduce this pocket and then probably swing back around and start the siege over here. But as it stands, we go into the victory check segment. This is the last turn of the game. If we look at the victory points, award 1 VP to the controlling player for each of Tobruk, Bardia, and Solemn. Well, that puts us at 3 victory points for the Axis, 0 for the Allies. This is, from a game perspective, an Axis victory. Okay, I'm going to stop recording here for a second. I'm going to collect myself and my thoughts, and we're going to go through what I'm going to call a debrief and sort of break down how the game went, how I thought it went. We'll be right back. Okay, game is over. Again, Axis victory, 3 victory points to 0 from holding Tobruk, Bardia, and Solemn at the end of the game. Now, in terms of interpreting this as a victory, all war games, especially these ones that are operational in nature, it's sort of, here's the beginning, here's the ending of what the game covers. Obviously, in the larger context of the war, it's a little bit different. So while we can call this an Axis victory in game terms, I think the board situation is evident to show that the Axis are basically being pushed back on their heels. And of course, me digging in and my defensive posturing with minimal attacking was sort of based around the idea that I am just defending to win the game. But there is sort of a thematic or historical component to why I'm doing that. So on turn 16 of the game, that is November 1942, the last turn of the game being December 1942. During November 1942, the Allies were conducting Operation Torch, which is way, way off map to the west, looking at Morocco and Algeria. And sort of what happened historically was that as the Axis was being pushed back here in Libya, the Allies were also conducting their operations in Algeria. And the Allies had quickly made landings, the UK and the Americans basically took Algeria very quickly and then started moving east toward Tunisia, where there were an allotment of Axis forces in Tunisia. And what made things worse for the Axis at that point was that over on our side of the Mediterranean and North Africa, the Axis had basically been pushed back towards Al Aghaila roughly around this time period or close to it, where it was sort of drifting that way. I'd have to look at the timeline of things. Maybe I can find something. I guess in December, the Allies, I'm checking online because I can't remember, the Allies were taking El Aghaila in December of 1942. So rather than being here, historically they would have been over there on the west map, way over there. And because of that, historically what was going on is that, now the Axis forces in Tunisia were being pushed by the forces from Operation Torch in the west and the continued operations of the Allies operating out of Egypt in the east, and they were sort of converging on Tunisia, and it became an untenable position for the Axis. Now, an Axis victory here, meaning, we held on to these important city strategic locations on this map. Obviously, we're much farther east than being pushed out of Al Aghaila, so I guess from a larger context of the war, we did better than history, certainly, and so much to say that the forces in Tunisia, the Axis, probably would be holding out longer because they're not being pushed by, they're not getting enveloped from the east as well, so they might have a little bit more operational ability to conduct themselves without getting crunched But I think still inevitably, like we're seeing here, the Allies are pushing the Axis back. It's really more a question of time, and eventually these forces probably would get just, if we were to continue playing the game and the replacements were similar, we would, going forward, we would probably still just see the Axis start to fall back or have a hard time holding. Though, who knows, right? That you're modeling counterfactual events in alt history, so how can you be sure of anything? Now, if we branched off of that, though, and said, well, maybe the forces in Tunisia hold out longer, these forces hold out longer, then the fall of Italy probably takes longer, and more Allied forces are tied up there, which means that maybe D-Day is delayed, and maybe this forces the war to take longer. I mean, our actions here aren't going to make the Axis win World War II or anything, right? But I think that at least would be the long-term impact, maybe, right? It's just, maybe that's the worth here. But as an operational game covering just this portion of the war in North Africa, I think it is an interesting playthrough in what we had here. Now, I want to keep away from giving a review of the game and just talk about how the game played. Only thing I'll say is that, technically, the war in North Africa was more than just what's on this map, and that, maybe someday there'll be an expansion that covers Operation Torch, and you could play the two games together somehow and include Tunisia. You could probably do a bunch of cool, crazy stuff, but Ted Racer, the designer, decided to focus this game really about, the map from El Agheila to El Alamein and Alexandria, and all the fighting that took place primarily with Rommel. So, I think this is probably, it's already a big map, and there's a lot of stuff going on it for as simple of a game that it is, that it works well for what it's trying to do in the time frame that you're doing it in. I think from an Allied perspective, I think the beginning of the game was tough because we didn't push against the Italians hard enough. The Allies never got to the western map, and it's pushing the Italians back where the Allies are likely going to get onto the west side of the map. Something that was sort of on my mind as we were playing was that, you could get victory points during the turns, right? The Allies would have needed to gone all the way over to Benghazi and hold it for a turn. It's right there in the glare, which they never got to. Historically, I think they did by the game's sort of countenance, and got a victory point or two from there, which would have been good. And if they had been able to hold Benghazi for a couple of turns, let's say 3 turns, and they got 3 victory points for that, then at the end of this game, it'd be 3 victory points to 3 victory points, and would be, I guess, a draw. And I guess the draw being, well, you held Benghazi longer against the Afrika Korps than historically, and, whatever. However you want to turn victory points into something of value from a historical operational perspective. The Axis would have gotten points if they were able to take Mersa Matra and or El Alamein while holding Tobruk. And of course, the problem for them was that taking Tobruk took a while, right? Tobruk is hard to take, obviously. And by the time the Axis could operate on the eastern map, they basically had lost all their operational capability to do it. And some of that is because the Panzer Corps HQ activation ship disappeared and was replaced with the arguably crappier Panzer Army Africa activation ship, which meant we couldn't actually operate on the east map basically at all with that ship, and we were at the mercy of all of our other chits. And that to me is really kind of annoying. And maybe it's a balancing thing, right? Like maybe the Axis just has so much momentum that you don't want to keep that chit active on the east because it's just too powerful, but it basically just totally removed any incentive for me to move forward like that. Now, the story might have been a little bit different if, say, maybe the Allies had managed to rack up 4 victory points via holding Benghazi or something, and then in which case, me holding these 3 victory spaces here wouldn't have been enough to win. Maybe I would have been trying much harder to get to Mersa Matra, but I think throughout the entire game as both sides, I was trying to do the best that I could, though I made some rule mistakes along the way, right? So early on, I used the assault table, CRT, a couple of times early on when I maybe shouldn't have. I don't think that had a huge impact to the game, but it did cause some bloodier battles where it probably would have been retreats instead of step losses. I got some of the upgrades wrong, so I forgot to do some allied upgrades one turn, and had to take care of that, sort of post facto. I screwed up the artillery replacements, but I think that isn't clear on the map, so when I talk about the game in my review, which will be the next video I do, I'm going to talk probably to some recommendations I would make to changes to the components to make the game a little bit clearer. And then, all along the way, I was screwing up combat stacking for a while, but that helped both sides. I kept forgetting that the Panzer units get to do the extra action, so like the attack with a move marker or a move with an attack marker, though I think a lot of the time it didn't matter too much, mostly because you're only able to take those actions with those Panzers, so unless you got a really great breakout, it probably wasn't going to be that useful necessarily. I think the supply rolls worked out okay, and a lot like a lot of other games I've played, Zox, cutting supply lines, I think that was pretty straightforward. I think it does work well here as sort of a puzzle as you play through looking for those avenues to do it, and I think I did an okay job, but I will say as a solo player here, it was tough because it's like I can't trick myself, right? I can't be like, ooh, when I next move, I'm gonna bring all of my tanks together and punch a hole in the wall, and he'll never see it coming. I could obviously see it coming, so it was hard to really come up with innovative, moves because I just know what I'm going to do. So I'm just playing. I think at the end of the day, I played very cautiously and conservatively for both sides, and it was really, only able to go on the offensive when it was clear that I had that operational initiative to do so. So the Panzer Doctrine for the Axis is awesome and came in handy a lot to beat up on the Allies. And then on top of that, this is one of the interesting asymmetrical bits of the game, the fact that the Axis is much more capable of defying, so to speak, combat stacking by having the smaller units involved. I think makes a big difference because they have a lot of those battalions, regiments. Which is it? I gotta look. Battalions. They have the battalions, and you can stuff a couple of different battalions in there along with, the brigades or what have you. And that allows them to be much more flexible, just hex for hex, putting up attack factors where the Allies are having a much more difficult time because everything is in brigades, basically. So they can only do 2 units on the center map for attacking and defending, though I did realize some good strategies like having, 2 infantry of a divisional formation so you can do those assault combats, but having a tank in the hex so that if that stack then is attacked by German tanks or whatever, you can use the tanks to defend, and the tanks have better defense values, they're just better overall, they can help, be anti-tank factors against the Axis tanks, panzers. So, I think along the way as I played through the game, I appreciated that asymmetrical nature a lot more and sort of understanding like, okay, how do I best use what I have? And of course I made some really silly mistakes not appreciating the constraints around those divisional formations in the core. So, it hurt both sides. I was constantly screwing up the distance of our HQs to the units. Like I'd forget to move the HQ, or the units would just be a little bit outside the HQ's range and they couldn't act properly. That slowed down the Italians for a while with the 21st Corps. But then similarly, I screwed up the Allies by having the 13th and the 30th Corps sort of swapped. So where I had lots of tanks, I had like the infantry-focused corps, and where I had a bunch of infantry, I had the tank-focused corps. I was able to correct that, but it took some moves to do it. And so I think there's, in hindsight, if I were to play this again, and maybe playing it opposed or whatever, I would recommend, you do this, but really take a look at where those units are. I'm sort of used to, I guess, World in Flames maybe, where, hey, a core is a core, a division's a division, you put them where you need them, and you attack, you do what you need to do. We're here, because it is an operational game, so this makes sense to do it. You really care where your units are and how they should be organized. So having those divisional units together, having them nearby the right HQ for what they need to be used for, making sure that in the post-combat advance, you didn't all of a sudden put a bunch of units outside the range of that HQ, because you probably need that HQ to be closer by for things like the artillery strikes. I did find, I guess, that there were a few times in the mid-game, early to mid-game, where I wasn't sure what to do. Like, it wasn't clear what was a good move to make, because it just seemed like it was like gridlock, right? If either side kind of tried to do something too crazy, it would undermine their entire position. And I sort of fought my way through that. But there's probably some nuances to, like, what's a really great way to protect Tobruk as the Allies. Maybe you're constantly shuffling in, with naval moves, units to hold it longer. I'm sure just like the minutia of each move, if you were to rewatch every video, if I were to rewatch it now, I'd be going, oh, you know what, I shouldn't have made that move, that was kind of silly, it would have been better to do this. But this being the first game I played of this, I think I can forgive myself a little bit for that. But for sure, if we were to keep playing, I think the Allies are would be coming out ahead anyway against what is on the board for the Axis. The dead piles are quite big now, right? And that's not even counting the units that were non-replaceable that I've taken off the board. They're down here. So, a lot to be said about that attritional nature of combat and wearing yourselves thin. What was interesting, too, was that for most of the game, it felt like the Axis was always topped off, and even the Allies, a lot of the time, were topped off in terms of replacement. So as the Axis, several points in the replacement phase, it was like, oh, this is a wasted replacement shit because I'm already maxed out. I'm maxed out. And that sort of kept happening except for a couple of situations. And that made me think, back on that me being cautious, was maybe as the Axis I could have afforded to take a little bit more risk. And maybe that would have got me into Mursa Matra and on the east map earlier in the game than I eventually got to. Because I didn't want to lose anything. But then I was getting replacement points that would have probably patched up whatever I lost up to that point. So I could have allowed myself to take on more risk than I did. But I'm a bit of a risk-averse person, maybe. And I look at it as risk management. Well, I don't want to risk anything. But I had some slack that I could have used. Same thing kind of for the Allies. Especially with the ability of the Allies to save replacements. That helped them a lot, actually, I think, in this game, because whatever I didn't use, I could save, and that was valuable. But, as you can see here, like, it got to the point where the Axis had just done so well and had stayed replenished that I really had most of the Axis units still on the board when we got to these sort of late-game assault doctrine phase where the Allies needed to bust through that Axis wall to stop the game winning from happening, and of course they failed to do it in time. I think we got the momentum going. It just took them too long to do it. And maybe if the Allies had taken greater risks in, say, turns 11, 12, and 13, they could have been farther along. But, and this goes back to my fear about the game, like, okay, well, if 11, 12, and 13 would have been good turns, the problem is, what's the activation shit schedule? Those might not be good turns for the Allies. And that fear of, does the action shit availability schedule restrict the game too much? I don't know if I have a good answer yet. It felt like a lot of the time it didn't matter too much. Like, you had enough chits that you could obviously take some actions. But there were many turns where it was like, well, the Axis only gets Africa Corps and 21st Corps. So unless those chits are going to be useful to you and get you going, you don't have a lot of activity, where those regular move and regular combat chits are probably the best chits. You want to do a full move with everything if you can do it. That's really slowed down the Axis getting reinforcements to where they could be. So that was sort of a challenge. So I think, I know Ted's design intent here is, you're a little bit constrained by the action shit availability, but it doesn't direct the game too much. I am willing to agree that is how it plays out. Just that on the turns where you just get crap for chits, it just feels annoying because it's like, well, it'd be nice to be able to actually do something, but I can't do anything near what I'd like to do, and it's completely outside of my control to do that. I know there are reasons for that, there are historical reasons for that, there are gameplay reasons for that, but it can be a little frustrating. But, I felt like the last couple of turns, like 14, 15, 16, and 17, like the Allies got plenty of action chits and they could use them in a pretty good order. It's nice having that and feeling like you can take the actions that you need to take. But again, when you're constrained, it feels like the game's being taken out of your hands because of that sometimes. So I feel like, your mileage may vary on how you feel about it. It might take me another play or two to really settle how I feel about it. But that sort of also plays into the fact that, like, if you're looking at the action shit availability chart at any given point, right, you're going to know, based on what's already been played in the turn, what chits are left. That will help you strategize what you can do, which is good. I probably should have done more of that, really. Well, I guess I sort of did along the way. But the other thing is, like, if you look at the action shit availability chart just for the game, and I didn't really do this. I was like, well, we'll find out what happens as it happens. But if I looked and said, well, based on this turn, turn 9 looks like it might be a really good turn versus, turn 7, that might, I might have thought ahead more strategically in terms of the operation mindset. So like every turn it was, okay, what can I do operationally with this? What I should have done more was look ahead to the next couple of turns. What are the chits that I'm going to get? What can I do to organize my forces to prepare for that better turn down the way? Or prepare for that crappy turn that's to come? What can I do to prepare myself for that? Now, the real actors in the war didn't have that foresight of an availability chart for action chits. So, I don't know. It's one of those things as a game, as an operational game especially, that's what you're constrained by. And I've got some issues, I think, overall with operational games in general, because when you play an operational game, reinforcements are set. Doesn't matter if the game situation is totally ahistorical due to some bad combats or good combats or whatever, the reinforcements are the same. You don't have any control over that. You're not playing as part of that actor, but what it also means is that nothing within the game, typically, there might be some operational games that do this a little bit better and there are ways to do it, but at least in this game it was like, oh, well, the Allies could be doing awesome and that's going to have zero impact on what reinforcements come. It's just going to zero impact. Or the Axis is doing very, very poorly. Well, that doesn't mean they're going to get any more reinforcements than they would have gotten historically, or if they were doing very well and didn't need reinforcements, you're not going to, somehow get some value for those reinforcements not coming. And so you're kind of put in this box where you know what's coming, the historical actors probably didn't know what was coming, and you're kind of playing in that zone, and you don't have much control over it. And I am used to playing strategic games where I can say, like in World in Flames, oh, North Africa's not going very well, but I don't want to lose track of that. As the Commonwealth, I'm going to ship a couple of extra infantry divisions to Egypt, right? And that will be reinforcements that will come, and it's my decision on how I want to put my force ratios. Well, in operational games, you don't really have that, so you're just limited in that way. And I guess that's just part and parcel to operational games. It's something I'm still getting used to. But, again, it is what it is. I can't complain too much about that. It makes sense for what we're dealing with here. So, yeah, I think if I played again, I'd probably play much better I'd be much more aware of what are the variables that I'm juggling and how to manage them a little bit better, appreciating, again, those divisional restrictions. The HQ restrictions, I think, would be a little bit differently. How to manage the units that you do have. I think the one weird thing with the allies, and again, this goes back to that withdrawal thing, is like, okay, I've got to withdraw units. Well, if I had units in a very critical spot on the map and I have to withdraw them, now maybe I've just given up a bunch of hexes. And you could say, well, if you pay attention to the reinforcement schedule, you would know what units are going to be withdrawn, and that's true. But again, it's sort of, in real life, is that how that would have worked? Would you say, hey, we've got to pull these units out, and, by the way, we're not going to be able to properly replace it. It's just you're going to have to deal with that situation, right? Like if you're saying, don't pull these units out, they're holding to Brook, and you're not going to get to exchange them. Some withdrawals you get exchanges for, some withdrawals you don't. And so in a real life situation where they say, well, we're going to pull these units out, you wouldn't say, oh, okay, well, we're going to pull them out anyway, screw to Brook. It would be, well, let's exchange those units. But somehow you, as the theater commander, has to kind of know that those units are going to be withdrawn. And it's just weird. It's just weird that way with the withdrawals. Something I think that maybe would help, and I'll touch upon this in my review as well, is like these units that are going to be withdrawn, I think the counters could have done a better job of actually making a note on there. Maybe it's a red dot or something that says, hey, they're going to be withdrawn. Just like we have for like the upgrades. On the counter there are little boxes that say when the unit is withdrawn for upgrades. But typically there aren't markers on the hex that say when a unit is going to be withdrawn to just be withdrawn. And if those were added, I think that would be very helpful. But again, I guess maybe it's part of the game, and like you should be paying attention to that, and you should put those units in places where they're not maybe as useful, or you can afford them being withdrawn from. But it's just a little bit of weirdness to get used to there, and I'm not sure like how else to deal with that. Because you're strictly talking about specific units. It's not like, again, like World in Flames. It's just any old corps. It's any old division, or strength points in like U.S. Civil War or something. This is specifically the New Zealand, division. This is very specifically an Australian division. This numbered division, and it's going to leave and come back. You have to plan for that as the Allies, I guess, appropriately. For my purposes, I didn't screw up too badly. But it is one of those things you just have to watch out for, and maybe there's a better way to deal with it, just to let the player know that they need to be aware of that. And again, I think even the upgrades for the artillery should probably have been done a little bit better on that reinforcement track up above. Starting to steer into review territory, so I think that's it. I think that's the debrief, right? We made it through. It took me, well, over a month, almost 2 months of recording when I could to play through this. It was like an hour per turn, sort of, like in terms of how you were watching it, probably longer because I'm sitting here thinking about it. I do think if I played it again, my actions would be swifter, and because I'm not talking to a camera, if I'm just playing this against somebody at a convention or at my house or whatever, I'd probably be moving pretty quick. I think you could ratchet through this game much quicker than the total viewing time you may have had watching these videos. And obviously that would, time will decrease with more familiarity with the game. So overall, I had a good time. It's just, trying to get through it. I'm kind of glad it's done, because now I can say, all right, we played it through. I got a good handle on it. Maybe a while before I can play it again, but I think it'd be a lot of fun to do that. So, okay, well, thank you for watching. That completes the playthrough video series here. I'm going to cap this off with a review video, which I'll try to do hopefully this weekend, and we'll have it up. I'll talk through, the components and what I really think of the game in totality, and we'll go from there. So if you made it through all of these videos, thank you for watching. I really appreciate that. If you're one of those people who managed to watch every single bit of this, or maybe you skipped through the video or whatever, thank you. I appreciate that. I don't know how often I'll do these like whole gameplay through recordings, because they take a lot of time. a lot of effort. It slows down me playing the game because I'm talking about it to the camera so much, but I think it's interesting to be able to do this for folks and give them a true run-through of a whole game so they can think to themselves whether or not this is a game they want to play or, just want to see someone else trying to hammer their way through it. So anyway, have a good one, guys. We'll catch you later. See you in the next video or, whatever. If you like this video, hit like. If you want to see more videos like this, hit subscribe, and we'll catch you later.